Hello, good evening, everyone. You're all very, very welcome to this special Abolish Abortion NI update. I do apologize. We had planned a Zoom meeting tonight, and just with the fast moving events of today, that hasn't been possible. So we would ask you, if you're on either Facebook or if you're on YouTube, if you please could share the link, and let's get this spread around as many people as possible. So we've got quite a bit to get through this evening. Hopefully we'll be here for around maybe 30 minutes. If you have any questions or comments, please put them on the Facebook page, and we'll try and get them and read them as we go along. But before we go any further, we're just gonna pray, and then I'm just gonna hand over to Mark, who is going to give us an update. So let's just pray. Father, we just want to give you thanks for this opportunity that we can meet together. We thank you for the power that is in your word. We thank you for the power that's in your gospel, Lord. Your gospel is indestructible. No matter what man or what parliaments or what assemblies may do to destroy it, it will never be destroyed. And so we thank you tonight, Father, for the power that is in the power of the gospel. We thank you, Lord, that it can save souls, and it can save babies from destruction. So, Lord, we just come before you tonight. We just pray for your blessing to be upon this time together. Amen. Okay, Mark.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see so many people joining the stream live. And as Wesley said, if you have any questions tonight at any stage, pop them into the chat. We can see them, and we'll try to respond to them as they come up. So today, Claire Bailey's bill that will criminalise Christian behaviour in areas within 100 to 250 metres of abortion clinics went to the further consideration stage. There were a couple of minor amendments that she was bringing that were quite technical amendments. And there was also an amendment by Jim Allister, which was actually quite an important amendment to begin with. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, this bill seeks to criminalise anything that would influence somebody outside an abortion clinic. That could be anything such as preaching of the gospel, handing out tracts, holding a sign with a scriptural text, praying outside the abortion clinic. Interestingly, today, Claire Bailey said that it wouldn't criminalise silent prayer. Presumably, however, she does accept that it does criminalise praying out loud, which is terrifying in the Western world. But all eyes today were very much on the Ulster Unionist Party, because the Ulster Unionist Party traditionally have had a conscience clause on abortion-related issues. And what has been pointed out to the Ulster Unionist Party a number of times over the last couple of weeks is that they are voting in favour of a blatantly pro-abortion bill. Claire Bailey is the most pro-abortion member of the Northern Ireland Assembly. That is clear. Her bill is being supported by pro-abortion activist groups like Alliance for Choice. When you look at the evidence that was submitted to the committee, every single Christian, pro-life or abolitionist organisation opposed this bill in their written submissions. The only organisations who supported the bill were pro-abortion organisations. This is a pro-abortion bill put forward by the most pro-abortion MLA there is and supported by pro-abortion advocacy groups. So today in the Assembly, only one Ulster Unionist Party member spoke. And it was Alan Chambers, who is a member of the Committee for Health, who's sat in on oral evidence. So we're going to listen, first of all, to what Alan says is the position of the Ulster Unionist Party. And then we're going to stop it every now and again just to analyse what he says. So, Wesley, do you want to go ahead and...
Mr. Deputy Speaker, certainly over the last number of days, I personally have been receiving a lot of emails, as indeed have my colleagues in the Ulster Unionist Party from pro-life groups and pro-life individuals. My mailbox would probably represent the same level of a huge level of emails that I received when debates in here were actually focused on abortion. So it's disappointing that that's the way that this debate and this legislation has been viewed by some people. The abortion is a matter of conscience for our MLAs in the Ulster Unionist Party. That has not changed. That remains the same. And,
okay, Wesley, you want to pause it there?
So our position is.
So it's interesting. So he's come out and said, well, it's disappointing that pro-life groups and pro-life people are viewing this as a pro-life versus pro-abortion stance or debate around this bill. Well, of course, that's how the other side view it as well. The pro-abortion lobby view this as an opportunity to silence life-affirming voices, silence Christians outside abortion clinics. So it isn't just pro-life people who see this as a pro-abortion / pro-life argument. It's the pro-abortion side too. But he goes on to say there that abortion is a conscience clause for the Ulster Unionist Party. Well, clearly it's not anymore. Today we had inside information from somebody within the UUP who found out for us that all of the UUP's MLAs were being whipped to vote in favour of Claire Bailey's bill. Now, when they're whipped, what that means is that the party leadership dictates from on high what way they must vote. And if an MLA steps out of line and votes in a different fashion, they will be thrown out of the party. Doug Beattie has dictated from on high that all Ulster Unionist MLAs must support this pro-abortion bill. So the conscience clause for the Ulster Unionist Party is gone. It's gone. There is no other way around that. The Ulster Unionist Party, by supporting this bill, are now firmly a pro-abortion party. Wesley, do you want to hit play?
Is not influenced by either pro-life or pro-choice arguments. This bill and the amendments that we have in front of us today really are designed to create a safe environment for vulnerable women who want to visit these clinics to seek advice.
Okay, pause it there.
They're also in place to protect members of.
So, he said this legislation is there to create safe spaces to allow people to go to the clinics to seek advice. So first insinuation there is that it's unsafe at the moment, that it's unsafe what is happening outside abortion clinics, which again is completely untrue and an allegation that is completely unfounded. There is absolutely no evidence to back up that claim. But the other thing he said there is that people are seeking advice at these clinics, when actually what is happening is at these clinics, children are being summarily poisoned to death. So, for example, the latest information we have from the Belfast Trust shows that there have been around 900 abortions carried out at the College Street abortion clinic in the centre of Belfast. What happens in this clinic is the woman goes to the clinic, she takes a pill at that clinic which poisons the child to death. 24 to 48 hours later, she takes a further 4 pills, which then discard the child, who is then flushed down the toilet or thrown into the bin of the home in which they should have lived. This is not advice. And the latest information we had from the Belfast Trust, and this is a direct quote from a Freedom of Information request. There are times when the woman takes this first pill and the first pill doesn't work. And they say in this, some fetuses, so in other words, some little ones, fetus is Latin for little ones, some little ones or some small children at an early gestational age may show transient signs of life. The word transient means for a short period of time. So there is a short period of time when some children are still alive when they're ejected into the toilet. Some children are still alive when they're put in tissue to be thrown in the bin. The Royal College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists recommend feticide after 21 weeks and 6 days to prevent fetuses showing signs of life. Feticide is where they inject a poison into the brain or into the heart of the child to poison them to death, to ensure that when they are then delivered intact, that they do not show signs of life. That's the reality of what's happening in these clinics. It isn't advice. Children are being murdered. Over 2,500 of them have been killed since these services started in March or April of 2020. So, he's trying to twist the reality of what is actually happening in these places to cover up the fact that they are now supporting an openly pro-abortion bill. We've lost Wesley. Wesley, is still there? Okay, do you want to hit play?
Of the public who may be entering those buildings on completely business, who may even be accompanied by children.
So again, Alan is on the Committee for Health, but clearly he doesn't understand the bill. He said that this bill is to protect, will also give protection to just general members of the public and children who are going in and out. The bill doesn't mention general members of the public at all. It mentions the person who's going for an abortion and the person who is accompanying them. It doesn't mention members of the general public in its slightest. Okay, Wesley, could you hit play again? Oh, here he is.
Also designed to give some form of protection to staff who work in those clinics. But the main issue here, and I think that people out there don't seem to be listening, don't seem to be hearing what the thrust of this legislation is about. It's not about abortion, it's about a women's health issue.
Pause it.
And women are perfectly entitled.
So that's an incredible statement. First of all, he said people aren't listening. They're not hearing what the thrust of this is. He's calling you stupid because you don't understand what this is actually about. When in reality, Alan's the one not listening. The Committee for Health weren't listening. The Ulster Unionist Party aren't listening. Because we have offered time and time and time again to bring pastors and ministers before the Committee for Health, to bring them to the UUP MLAs, to sit down and speak to them, and they haven't listened. If anybody can be accused of not listening, it's Alan and the Committee for Health on which he sits. We wrote to Alan and the committee. We asked them to reopen oral evidence to allow pastors and ministers who are at these clinics to come and have their say. And he refused. He refused. He went on then to call abortion a women's health issue. The killing of 2,500 children is a women's health issue, according to Alan Chambers and the Ulster Unionist Party. And without wanting to make him look stupid, he has just said, this isn't about abortion. And as he stands there directly below his name, it says abortion. He's saying this isn't about abortion, and it says it on the screen. Do the DUP or do the Ulster Unionist Party think you are stupid and are going to believe that this is not about abortion when it's written on the screen? He then goes on just briefly in the next part to talk about abortion as being a woman's right. Again, this is the official stance of the Ulster Unionist Party, that abortion is now a woman's right. So Wesley, could you play it on?
And should have the right to seek advice on this topic and get that advice which is available in these clinics. I know that some of the, well, most of the letters, a lot of them are copy and paste, seem to paint a completely different picture about what actually takes place outside these clinics by protesters. And the evidence that we listened to in the Health Committee, both from trust officials and from the police, were very harrowing. And I think it's unacceptable in a civilised society that people should behave like that.
Okay, so he said that people aren't listening to, people are painting a different picture than what he has heard in oral evidence at the Committee for Health. Now, why might these submissions from people who are writing letters to him, why might those submissions look different than what he heard in oral evidence? And the reason is that in oral evidence, they only listened to one side of the argument. So he talked about the trusts there. They brought representatives from each of the trusts into the committee, and they asked them for their views on what's happening at the clinics. And the Belfast Trust sent along the abortionist from the College Street abortion clinic to give evidence. Now, that's not a neutral source of information. It's not something that any trust should be put in. But not only that, they then presented evidence to the committee that there were 41 incidents recorded at the clinic since March, and have subsequently had to admit that 27 of those were entered onto their system just a couple of weeks before the evidence session by a single person on a single day. In other words, it is highly suspicious evidence that somebody has tampered with the evidence in order to make it look like it's worse than it is. So Alan knows this. He knows that the evidence is dodgy. He sits on the Committee for Health. He's heard that the evidence is dodgy. We've written to them multiple times to tell them it's dodgy, but he still comes out in the Assembly and trots out these real dodgy statistics. Now, again, Alan, his party, members of the Committee for Health have refused consistently to listen to Christians who are at the clinics, to listen to what they say, and then when he gets letters from them or gets emails from them that paint a different picture, he says, oh, well, look at what the trust told us. They haven't listened. They haven't listened to the people who are there. They've only listened to one side, and that's why he's seeing a different picture.
Against that, people should always have the right to protest, and I don't think it's a particularly big ask to ask people to take their protest 150 metres away from the door of these clinics.
Okay, pause there.
Certainly today, I'd be supporting Amendment 1, 2, 3.
So again, Christians do not go to abortion clinics to protest. They go to abortion clinics because they're commanded by God in Proverbs 24, verse 11, where he says, rescue those who are being taken to death, hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. They go because they're commanded to go by God, and they go to plead for the lives of the children being carried there to death, and to try and attempt to save the woman from making that enormous mistake. They do it peacefully, they do it respectfully, and certainly they cannot move that 100 and 150 to 250 metres away from the clinic.
3 and 5, and certainly looking forward to hearing Mr. Allister make the case for Amendment 4, but at the age of minded not to support it, but we'll listen to the arguments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So that was an interesting point there. He was saying that the Ulster Unionist Party were going to be supporting Claire Bailey's amendments. They were technical amendments, so they were going to be supporting those amendments. But at that stage, right at the start of the debate, he wasn't going to, and the Ulster Unionist Party weren't going to support Jim Allister's amendment. They weren't thinking of supporting it. So bear that in mind as we move on. So I think we're going to skip on now to Jim Allister and his amendment.
I call Jim Allister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Amendment 4 is very focused on the criminal offence which arises within this bill in Clause 5, and it's focused upon introducing a very modest modicum of acceptability and reform to that offence. Because as that offence stands, and of course it is a very wide offence, it ranges from embracing harassment, abuse, to the mere issue of influence, but as that offence stands, it is an absolute offence. That is to say, like driving your car with no insurance, there is no answer to it. You cannot ever defend yourself against it. It is an absolute offence. And that in the criminal calendar is very, very rare. And it's very rare for a very good reason, namely that the basic premise of a criminal offence is that it comprises both the actus reus, that of doing the act, and the mens rea, that which is informed by the mind. And within that ambit, it is overwhelmingly the case that our law provides reasonable excuse for someone accused. So by putting that into this act, into this bill, we are being entirely compatible with the trend in creating criminal offences. To say, not to this Assembly, to define what a reasonable excuse is, because every case is different, to say to the court, you decide if the defence is raised by someone accused, whether or not what they did or said was reasonable. So this House deciding what's reasonable. Judging by this House, there could be nothing that is reasonable. Well, when I develop a point, I will. So we're in a situation where we are saying, in respect of this very, very sweeping offence, which includes silent actions designed to influence, that someone accused of that should be afforded the basic tenet that applies in respect of virtually every other criminal offence, that of having a reasonable excuse, upon which the court would then be required to rule whether that which was done was reasonable or not. The alternative is the totalitarianism offered by Sinn Féin, the SDLP and the Alliance, that under our rule of law, as you would in Russia, decree it's an absolute offence. You cannot protest. It can never be reasonable to do so. There is no comprehension of there being a reasonable excuse for doing that, because it so offends the very principle that this House is so intent on defending, namely that of death through abortion, that you can never have a reasonable excuse to dare to breathe opposition to it. That is the ultimate in totalitarianism. And that is what the Alliance Party, Sinn Féin and the SDLP are embracing today. All they are asked to support is the introduction into this legislation of the very lowest common denominator of criminal defences in respect of a criminal offence, namely, let the court decide what was done was reasonable or not. And it's not by your standards or mine, it's by the standards that the court would set in that respect. Why does that offend anyone who believes in innocent till proven guilty? Why does that offend anyone who believes that when criminal prosecutions are brought, someone should have the right of defence? That only offends if you're an apostle of totalitarianism, because that is what absolute offences are about. And I welcome the fact that the sponsor, and there's no one more enthusiastic about this bill than the sponsor. I accept the fact that both in the consideration stage and since, she has accepted the basic tenet and principle that we should create criminal offences which do not expunge that most fundamental tenet of letting a court decide whether or not something is reasonable conduct. To do that and to create an absolute offence is really a stretch way beyond where I would say this Assembly should wish to go. I'll give way.
Thank the member for taking the intervention. Would the member agree with me, as we were advised as a committee whenever I was on the Justice Committee, that not having the reasonableness excuse in there does not prevent a judge from actually looking at a case as every individual case and seeing what the particular circumstance of that case were?
With respect, the member is absolutely wrong. Clause 5 utterly excludes a court from looking to see, is there something reasonable here which caused this? Because Clause 5 is written in absolutist terms. If the person does any of these things, then because there is an offence of reasonable excuse, they are guilty as charged automatically. It's absolute. Once you prove the actus reus of this offence, then endgame, the offence is proven. And that's why the member in previous interventions has been articulating or attempting to articulate a case against reasonable defence, because she wants to be totalitarian. She wants to be absolutist. She wants to rob any accused person. And sometimes in other circumstances, she's quite defensive of accused persons and their rights. But she wants to rob any accused person under Clause 5 of that most fundamental right to say, but what I did was reasonable. And for the court, was it reasonable? Once you exclude that, then you rob the court and the accused of the fundamental right to decide whether what was done was or wasn't reasonable. That is totalitarianism writ large. That is suppression of protest writ large. That is the fundamental now of a most basic tenet of in respect of any offence that arises in the criminal calendar. So it's not, as someone said, a get-out clause, because it's not that simply the accused can say, I had a reasonable excuse. No. They can say, I think I had a reasonable excuse, but you, the court, decide whether or not it was a reasonable excuse. That's what this modest amendment is all about. The one hesitation I had in bringing this amendment was lest I made this bill human rights compliant, because at the moment its absolutism, I think, really does stretch its human rights compliance. But I do think that this offence, it's the will of the House that such offence exists, that at least should have that basic component that virtually every other offence in the criminal calendar has, and that we should not be so dogmatic and totalitarian.
We can pause it there, Wesley. So Jim Allister was bringing a very very modest amendment to the bill that would have included a clause of reasonable excuse. In other words, if a person was charged with an offence in one of these safe zones, they would have an opportunity to go to court and to argue their position, to argue why they were there, and it would be up for the courts to decide. The way the bill is written, it creates an offence of influence, and there is no opportunity for someone to defend themselves, to give themselves a defence and say to a court, I believe that I was doing this in the right, and let the court decide. Now, what was really interesting is Claire Bailey, who brought the bill, actually supported this amendment. She said she was going to be recommending that the House support this amendment, and she was willing to put this into the bill. So what I think we'll do, Wesley, is if we could skip on a little bit to division on the First Amendment. So keep going. Back a bit. Yeah. Try there.
All those in favor? Contrary, no. Clear the lobbies. The question will be put in 3 minutes.
Okay, so they were clearing the lobbies, and the reason they're clearing the lobbies is because they think there's going to be division, and it has to go to a vote. So they get a 3-minute break to have another think about it, to have a chat among each other. Then he comes back and asks the question again. And if there's no agreement, they go to a vote. Now, in order to go to a vote, what happens is they assign tellers. The tellers count up the votes, and generally people will be tellers for the side that they support, or the amendment they support. So Wesley, if we could skip on probably another 2 minutes or so to when they go for division. Okay.
Ed McLaughlin and Paula Bradshaw, tellers for the noes, William Irwin and Mervyn Story.
Okay, pause it there.
Before the assembly, I
So,
remind you that
and again, this kind of blows this whole UUP argument of this is not about abortion out of the water. So the tellers for the ayes, the tellers for that we are in favour of this amendment, were Sinead McLaughlin and Paula Bradshaw, two of the most pro-abortion MLAs in the Assembly. And then on the no side, the people who were against it were William Irwin and Mervyn Story, two very traditionally pro-life people. So again, it blows the whole argument that this isn't about abortion. It is about abortion. So I think what we'll do, Wesley, just at that stage, is just go through what happened with the votes. So I'll look it up here. So if you want to, we'll turn your screen off and instead share mine. So on the Northern Ireland Assembly page, you can see all of the votes that happen on division. And because Claire Bailey's first amendment went through, they didn't need to vote on any of the others. It was just that they would pass. So the voting on Claire Bailey's amendment initially was very similar to the previous stage. That I think there were 57 people voted in favour of her amendments, 28 voted no. And what you'll notice is if you look down the list, as expected, as we were told, every single Ulster Unionist MLA voted in favour of this pro-abortion bill again. The only one who didn't vote in favour of it was Roy Beggs. Now, one MLA told me at the start of the week that he has the ultimate get-out clause. If there's ever anything controversial, you will find him sitting in the chair for the debate, and that is what happened tonight. So Roy was not voting tonight and couldn't vote because he was chairing the debate. But every other Ulster Unionist Party MLA voted favour of Claire Bailey's amendment. The amendment that was brought by Jim Allister. Now, if you remember back to Alan Chambers discussing the Ulster Unionist Party position, they said at that stage, at the very start of the debate, that they weren't of a mind to vote in favour of Jim Allister's amendment. So at that stage, they weren't considering voting for it. But if this page will load, which it may not, if you look at the amendment from Jim Allister, there were 44 people who voted against it and 40 voted in favour. Now, what was really interesting is that the 40 who voted in favour were Claire Bailey and Rachel Wood from the Green Party. So Claire Bailey, whose bill this is, voted in favour of Jim Allister's amendment. But then every single unionist politician in the NI Assembly voted in favour of Jim Allister's amendment. Every single unionist, and that includes all of the Ulster Unionist Party MLAs as well. Now, we have a situation now where every unionist has voted to allow for a reasonable defence in court, for people to be able to go to court and plead their innocence. Every nationalist has voted against that clause being in place. So this is now the territory of a petition of concern. So petition of concern is there to protect minority communities. It's there to protect, to stop one community dominating the other. And it is there to raise concerns with a bill. So petition of concern, we have 28 signatures so far. We need 30. That 28 will go to 29 because the Democratic Unionist Party are co-opting somebody into the Lagan Valley seat. So there are 29 signatures. We need 30. And if we get 30 signatures, this bill will fall. It will stop dead. We need one more signature from one of those people in the Ulster Unionist Party who believe, firstly, that there should be a legal system where people can give a defence of their actions in court. But secondly, and most importantly, we need people in the Ulster Unionist Party who are Christians, who believe in the Word of God, who believe that God called us to bring the gospel to all of the nations, and who are going to take a stand against Doug Beattie and against his regime that is pushing this pro-abortion agenda in the Ulster Unionist Party, and are going to take a stand for God. They can sign it as a group, and we would be delighted if they would, but we're calling on one or others to just put their name on the line and take a stand for God. Now, the person that we think is the person to do this is Robbie Butler. So Robbie Butler is a Christian MLA, and we're told that he wears his faith on his sleeve. We're told that he is very open about his faith. And we are urging Robbie Butler to obey God and defy Doug by signing a petition of concern, putting his name to it, stopping this bill. Let's come back to this in the next legislative session. Let's give it proper scrutiny. Let's hear from all of the people who are affected and involved. And let's seek to come to some kind of a conclusion that protects all people within society, does not elevate the rights of one over another, and seeks to end harassment where harassment takes place. And we support that because we are on the end of harassment all the time. Everywhere we go, we get harassed, we get attacked, we get things thrown at us, we get spat at, we get called all sorts of names. So we are more than happy to talk about harassment and how we end it within our society, and we respect the views of everybody. So what we would want you to do, and what we're going to encourage you to do, is continue calling Robbie Butler, phone his office. The number is on your screen. Ask him politely to sign a petition of concern, this all hangs on him. This bill will fall if he signs. If he doesn't sign, it will go through, and within months, Christians will be criminalised for sharing the gospel. They will be potentially arrested without the opportunity to go to court. There will be extremely serious fines for people who are in breach of these laws, and they will do it because they must obey God rather than men. So call Robbie Butler tomorrow, make it a priority, set a reminder on your phone, and call him, be polite, be courteous, ask for a call back, ask him to sign a petition of concern. But also, if you can and if you have time, follow it up with a call to all of your own Ulster Unionist Party MLAs. Call them, ask them to sign the petition of concern too, in order to protect the idea of a defence being an important part of a trial, and take a stand against this totalitarian regime that is coming from the nationalist side of the Assembly. So Wesley, have you anything else that you want to add?
Yeah. Just a couple of questions, Mark, and then we're just going to be wrapping up very shortly. If any of you do have anything specific that you want to ask, just drop it into the chat, and we'll try and get to it. One of the recurring questions that has come up is all protest banned within these censorship zones, or is it just one-sided?
Yeah, so the Claire Bailey has been very careful when she's created this bill to not criminalise her friends. This only criminalises influence that may stop someone going into the abortion clinic. It does not criminalise influence that may force or encourage somebody to go into the abortion clinic. She did that deliberately. Her friends in Alliance for Choice who are supporting her bill have created an abortion doula program, which is a program where trained women will come alongside someone who's having an abortion. They'll accompany them to the clinic. They'll support them in the taking of the pills. They'll support them in the disposal of their child. It's a horrific reality of what we're living in here in Northern Ireland. Now, what will happen under this bill is that these death doulas will be able to behave in whatever way they want. They'll be able to go to the abortion clinics, stand outside. If women get to the clinics and decide that they do not want to go through with it, these doulas of death will be able to stand outside the clinics and encourage them, say, go on in, go on, do it. I'll hold your hand. I'll be with you. I'll look after you. It's okay. You don't need to worry. You can go on and do it. They'll be free to exercise that influence on someone who is at the abortion clinic, whereas a Christian who is praying or handing out tracts or simply holding a sign that says, we love you and we can help you, will be a Christian and will face being challenged by the police for what they're doing.
Great, thank you for that. Another question that has arisen is there enough time to stop this before the end of the current Assembly mandate?
Yeah, so currently the final stage, there is one more stage to go in the Assembly. It will come to a final vote, and that final vote will be on the 22nd. It's currently scheduled for the 22nd of March, so next Tuesday. So we have got until next Tuesday to ensure that this does not proceed. The best way for that to happen is for a petition of concern to be lodged. We have 29 signatures for it. We need one more. And if that petition of concern gains 30 signatures, it will automatically kill this bill because there is a 14-day cooling off period after a petition of concern is filed, in which there is no vote taken on the bill. So 14 days would push us beyond the end of the Assembly mandate, meaning that Assembly will have closed down by the time the 14 days are up. So again, it is vitally important that we get Christians phoning Ulster Unionist Party MLAs, phoning Robbie Butler, asking Robbie to sign the petition of concern. This all hangs on one person. If he signs, the bill falls. But we need that done before next Tuesday. So pick up the phone tomorrow, pick up the phone every day this week, and keep trying to get the message through. But also, the biggest thing that you can do is pray for these guys. Pray for Robbie, pray for Roy Beggs, pray for Rosemary Barton and others within the party who have heard the truth, who have sat in churches, who go to church on a weekly basis. Pray that God influences them, that he removes the scale from before their eyes, and that they see the truth, that he denies them sleep if that's what's necessary, in order to get them over the line and get them to take a stand on behalf of him.
Great, thank you for that. And just finally, one last question. I think maybe you've touched a little bit on what specifically can pastors and ministers do to speak up on this issue? What would your advice be to them?
So pastors and ministers, especially pastors and ministers, we need to be contacting these MLAs, specifically telling them what is happening at the clinics, requesting that they meet with them, that they talk to them, and keep phoning. Leave a name, ask for a callback, and try to get through to speak to the person that you need to. One of the things that we have to remember about MLAs is that they work for us. They are our public servants. And when we want to speak to them, they should make time to speak to us. So call them, be polite, be courteous, leave your name. And if you don't get a phone call that day, phone the next day and keep phoning. It is so important that we keep phoning these MLAs. We keep asking to get through and speak to people, because time is short on this.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. That concludes our presentation for tonight. I just want to thank each and every one of you for being with us. If you have any further questions or comments and you want to get in touch, just send us an email, info@abolishabortionni.org, or go on our website. There is a phone number there which you can get in touch with as well. So if you have any questions or comments that you feel you want to get to us, please just get in touch. We'll be back maybe later this week with a further update. And we've got quite a lot of things that we're working on in the background. So we really appreciate your prayers, your support. But please do speak to your neighbors, your family, your friends, those that are in your church congregations, and particularly your pastors, your clergymen, your elders, your deacons, anyone in church leadership. This needs to be the priority issue for all Christians in Northern Ireland this week. And we may possibly be back out on the streets on Saturday. We'll be advising that in the next few days. We would like to do something quite significant maybe this weekend. So do pray for us in that. But from all of us here at the Abolish Abortion NI team, thank you for being with us tonight. God bless you all.